Chris, podcast 58, and I am COVID negative.
Nice.
We're
I
both
am
finally healed up
I
here.
am on the mend, and by the time
Right.
they hear this podcast, we will already have been to the Great American Outdoor Show, and
Yep.
hopefully we don't drag any crud home with us.
Yeah. We got
Reinfection.
several people wanting to meet up with us here, and this today we're recording this on Wednesday,
Nice.
the 31st, and we will be at the show on the 3rd, which is this Saturday. So by the time this airs, like you said, we'll already have been at the show.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully we can shoot a couple videos there, maybe.
I plan on it. Yeah, I'm bringing my camera, um, backpack full of food and some goodies and some coffee for me and you. You want some coffee?
No, I will have hot chocolate in my thermos.
No coffee for Chris.
No.
He'll be sitting in the Great American Outdoor Show toilet.
Maybe.
Oh, you will be. But anyway, enough toilet talk and COVID talk.
Toilet
We're
talk.
gonna jump right into it today. Podcast 58. We're feeling good, and it's all about deer bedding. And we're going to share a couple different scenarios here. Chris is going to share some bedding instances that he has in his neck of the woods, which is in, Central PA, basically?
I call it Central PA, but it's probably Northwest.
Okay, so Northwest PA.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to share my experiences with bedding in the eastern part of Maryland. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about creating it on private land. Should you not? And we'll give some different scenarios and stuff. And then I also want to share a story on my latest consulting trip because that's kind of where this topic had came up, and I figured we should touch on it.
Gotcha.
So I'll share my story here with this recent consulting trip because it's interesting. I think I consulted on the world's smallest private land, and it was 3.5 acres in Ohio. And super nice guy, him and his father. I think they listen to this podcast, so I'm not going to name names and stuff, but he knows who he is. Super nice people. Um, they got this land from his grandmother, and she had left it to him. But it's just basically a 3.5 acre piece of woods, long and narrow. The fields and everything his grandmother owns, but I guess when she passes, that the fields are left to a farmer, I
Mm,
guess, and then he is only left the 3.5 acres of woods. That's it.
really? The farmer's gonna own it?
I think somebody. I can't understand. I didn't fully understand the whole thing, but yes, he only gets the woods, and then a
Phew.
farmer possibly gets all the fields, and it's a lot of field. It's a lot of ag that they get.
Wow. Okay.
Now, where this property sits is it's off the main road, probably 400 yards off the main road, and it's just a strip of woods.
Mhm.
Then there's another strip in the back that goes. It's kind of shaped like a L.
Okay.
Now, there's nothing around.
Hmm.
Like if you looked out through the fields, you're talking a half a mile to a mile in each direction before you start getting to more woods.
Hmm.
But this guy has monster bucks on camera in his woods. Monster bucks. The problem is majority of them is at nighttime, which makes sense.
Yeah.
During the summer, when the ag is in, he gets tons of daylight pictures. But once the ag is cut, they kind of diminish and they go
Yeah.
nocturnal.
Yeah. They're basically using it for like a staging area to get
Right.
into the ag.
Yeah, most likely.
Gotcha.
So he had contacted me over a month ago and wanted to set this up. And I was hesitant because it's so small. So I informed him, like, hey, like, it's really small. Like, this is kind of a weird setup, but, you do have good bucks on camera. So I'm willing to help you out. So anyway, we set a date up and I went out there. And super nice people, him and his father, they walked the property with me and we set it up. Now, I didn't necessarily want to make bedding, but we did a little bit. And the reason we did that was because people, like you said before this podcast, people talk about buck bedding. I didn't really necessarily want bucks bedding there. I wanted just bedding in general for does, because basically the way I set it up and the way he has to hunt it is I did put in a food plot, some nice travel corridor running long ways with the property, and then bedding in the back. And he's going to plant some seedlings, like some spruce trees and stuff in the backside, just to kind of thicken it up a little bit and add a little bit more cover in there. Food plot on the opposite end, travel corridor through the middle with a water hole in the middle. He can access all this stuff, and that water hole will become active during the rut because the bucks are running around, get thirsty, and that's when he sees most of his action is in the rut, because those bucks cross the street from this huge chunk of woods. They cross the street and they come into his woods, and they're in there. They're looking for does.
Mm.
So basically, the way I set it up for him is to have some cell cams in there. He needs food, so he's planning about a quarter-acre food plot in a domain blend, one that's going to sustain the long season. And those bucks, the whole idea was to stay out of the woods. I changed his whole mindset on how to hunt this little piece, because he was going in there constantly.
Mm.
And on a small property like that, like, you can't do that. So we went over everything from A to Z with him, and now they're super excited to implement all this stuff in there. But again, like, his specific setup did require a little bedding, because these deer are coming from a half mile to a mile away with no other woods around. And we wanted does to bed in there to have the bucks coming in there during the rut to check it out.
Mm.
And that will happen because now he has food. He'll have a water hole. He'll have a couple mock scrapes in there. He'll have the tree stands are on the edges. He can get right to them, sneak in. He'll have a hay bale blind tucked up in the woods for his grandfather. I think he said he had a daughter that was coming up young. She was going to start hunting. So he'll have a nice setup. And I told him, let the cameras do the work for him. Don't, and I always say this to everybody, all the clients I go to, don't hunt because you want to, hunt because it makes sense. You can't just go in there just to hunt for the heck of it. Like, go in there for a purpose with a reason, knowing that you have a buck that's daylighting, like in a pattern of a couple days. Because if you constantly go in there, you're just 3.5 acres, man. You can see right through the other side. You're
Yeah.
just gonna bump deer every single time. So
Mhm.
when you get a pattern of something traveling back and forth between this bedding area and the food plot, set up, go kill it. So that's a scenario with bedding where we don't want to create that whole 3.5 acres in the bedding, because then how do you get around it? So we put bedding on the one end, and we just want does to bed there. And will bucks bed there? Maybe, but we wanted a doe bedding area. So that's just a an interesting setup where he has, and I'm excited, man, because he had huge bucks on camera. Like, I mean, it's Ohio, so like, there's big bucks, and it's isolated from all hunting pressure. I mean, nobody's going to be there. So it's a cool setup.
Yeah, it's like an island in the ocean, huh?
Exactly, pretty much.
So,
Yeah,
but like you said, though, to reiterate, there was ag fields all around,
everywhere.
and that'll be gone by the time hunting season comes.
Hmm.
So, with you adding some food in there, surely he will get some does that'll bed somewhere around there.
Exactly, and that's what we wanted to basically. It's basically probably going to be a rut spot,
Yeah.
essentially. But he could, if he's getting daylight pictures of bucks in the early season, I said go for it, as long as you have good winds and stuff, but be
Mhm.
precise. But to see how it plays out.
Yeah, don't beat it
Um,
up.
no, definitely don't beat it up. I think he'll have good success. He's pumped about it. I already sent him the plan. He already wrote back an email, and he's excited. They're gonna get on it right away.
Hmm.
So I'm excited for him, and we'll keep everybody updated on that one.
There you go.
So now that that's out of the way,
Mhm.
um, let's describe betting on. Let's describe the differences between your betting areas in northwest Pennsylvania
Mhm.
and the betting areas that I find in the eastern part of Maryland. And then once we describe that, let's describe how we can make betting on private land.
Mhm.
So why don't you go ahead and describe in the mountains of Pennsylvania on public land where the deer are bedding? What do they
Okay.
use? What are they bedding around? Is it high, low? Is it in pines? Is it in cedars? Is it in your favorite word, a rhododendron? Give us some info on Northwest Pennsylvania bedding, public land.
Well, I had taken a scouting trip yesterday just to
Yeah,
look at a new piece
yes, you
property.
did.
I've been wanting to go survey it out for a long time, and um, it was basically a big bowl that goes down into this valley, and there's a creek that runs down in through there, and the whole bottom is full of rhododendron and laurel, mostly mountain laurel though. Don't get your rhododendron all hyped up here,
I'm excited.
because I even had my app out and I was taking pictures, and it was laurel. So there's gonna be a lot of nooks down in there where they're gonna be bedded.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, let me cut you off real quick.
good.
That buck you have
Oh,
behind you on the wall.
yeah,
Now, just so people understand here, this isn't just something that's made up. Like you're finding these bucks on these
yeah,
public land and they're bedding and you're catching them back and forth on these ridges and stuff.
yeah,
And you've killed 3 big bucks on these mountains so far
yeah,
in the past
yeah.
like 4 years.
Right, right.
Yeah. So you have a trend here that you have found the bedding, you have found the good area, the ridge
Mhm.
tops and stuff. So it's not something that's being made up here. Like you're legitimately finding.
No, this I'm actually sharing some real
Yeah.
information
So
here.
I just wanted to
I
put that
mean,
throw that
so
out there
listen
real
up.
quick. Yeah, listen up.
So so yeah, I tend, and what's working for me anyhow, I don't know about your areas,
Yeah.
people listening, but what's working for me is I concentrate on low lying areas, the big elevation changes, let's say. And I like I like to be using the benches. And I get on top of these benches, and the deer are usually bedded lower. And
Mhm.
like I said, it's usually laurel below me, or thick pine of some sort.
So you're saying there it's you got a hill, a ridge,
Yeah.
a hill that comes down, then you got a bench,
Hmm.
and then the deer are bedding on that bench?
No, they're bedding in the very bottoms,
Okay.
and I'm up on top on the bench.
Okay.
And what they do is I'm primarily an evening hunter because I have a real job and don't I can't be out in the mornings. And Saturdays I can get out, but a lot of times Saturdays are my exploring days. I'll go out and
Sunday hunting
try.
PA, Sunday hunting PA.
Yeah, I wish we had some, but so yeah, Saturdays are the days I basically go out blind some places
Right.
sometimes and just try a new spot here and there. But I'm primarily an evening hunter, so I I use that elevation change. They usually bed below me in the thick stuff, and I get on top on a bench, and they usually work their way up the benches. And what's at the top of the hills normally? Okay, sunlight. So you get sunlight. So that's where primarily you find all your good oak and beech trees and things that are on top. They're getting the crowns of those trees are getting the good sunlight. So
Now
that's
this
where the majority of the mast is.
this hillside where primarily I guess they're bedding, is it north or south facing?
That would be got me thinking now.
Got your
The one
brain working.
the one area, well, definitely the one I visited yesterday would be south facing. Now, the other one where I shot that buck at,
Mhm.
that would be sort of easterly, actually.
Okay. And they're bedding
And
down low,
and they're
and then
bedding
they're
low,
working their
and
way
they
up to the
work their
top.
way up to the top, and they're headed for Oak Flats.
Mhm.
And because
Is there
that's primarily what I look for. I look for benches that lead down over a hillside, and the bench I want to be between the hillside and the food. So I try to look for something that has two benches, like two steps,
Mhm.
and I get down on the first step, and the next step is down over.
Right.
So they come up over, hit the bench I'm on, and usually they slow down and survey their surroundings before they head up to the next bench for the food.
Now when
So
it drops down,
I'm cutting them off.
are they coming straight up, or are they working around like a bowl, like
A lot
a
of the
flatter start?
times, they're coming up pretty much straight. You know, um, of course they follow paths of least resistance.
Mhm.
But primarily coming straight up over. You know,
Got it.
um, Now this one that I looked at yesterday, they might come around the rim of the bowl
Mhm.
on this one, but I'll figure that out. I
Yeah.
don't I I only spent 2 hours in there yesterday.
And that's a big wood setting, no ag.
No, no ag. It's beside a highway. Um and there's like 4,000 acres behind it, you know.
Mhm.
So there's lots of room to wiggle back in there for sure. And I'm just scratching the tip of the iceberg here where I went in and looked around yesterday.
Mhm.
I probably didn't even go a quarter mile into the woods. You know, there was just so much to look at and survey and look down. I'll probably tomorrow go back out there and I'm going to head down into that bottom and see what all is down in there because I know there's people that are push that out in bear season. So I may be able to do some early season bear hunting in there too with the
Mhm.
muzzle loader or something
Mhm.
because
Alright,
the place
now
is loaded with regen of beech trees coming.
oh, yeah, I remember
So,
you sending me a picture yesterday.
yeah,
Um, Now you said where these bucks are bedding on the lower down all the way down to the bottom, you
yeah.
said there's like, what are they bedding in and around? They're bedding on the flat parts, and then they're bedding in rhododendron, cedars, pines?
Well, primarily you get down in there and they have the seclusion of the rhododendron, um, but a lot of times you'll find a bed underneath some pine trees or something,
Mhm,
low hanging thermal cover basically
mhm,
because of the type of terrain and the weather we're in
yeah.
right now, the pattern we're in. Now
Well, you remember the
come
picture I s
summertime, they'll just lay
yeah,
down wherever they want. But
right.
right
Well, you
now they're
remember the
seeking that thermal cover.
yeah, you remember the picture I sent you a couple weeks ago on the one property where it was snow, and
Yeah.
it was raked out underneath of a overhanging,
Yes.
cedar branch, and that's
Yes.
where the deer were bedded up underneath of.
Yeah. Yep.
And they were just looking for that cover, cover from them and
Yeah.
all that.
And that's basically what they're doing right now. Uh
Mhm,
they they look for a place to keep their back dry. Um but yeah, I find a lot of low hanging limbs on pines yesterday with beds all tucked up underneath them. And actually,
mhm,
I was looking for some sheds.
mhm.
I was hoping to get lucky, but I
Now,
didn't
where you
find
found
any.
those beds yesterday underneath
Yeah.
the branches, was
hmm
that high or low?
Those ones were actually on flat land, believe it or
Okay.
not.
Up hot.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, they were up high, up on the flat. Um, but those are probably nighttime spots where they just laid down.
Mhm.
Um, because it's pretty much out in the wide open. So I'm not thinking it was prime time, daylight spots because they would be pretty easy to be pegged right there in that area.
Picked off.
Yeah. So I'm guessing those were nighttime spots, but you know when the pressure's on, you're talking archery season or gun season. You know,
Yeah, they go somewhere
I'm
else.
gonna have to go down deep somewhere,
Right.
and move them
Get
probably.
on the edge of some thick stuff or something.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, primarily I'm looking at it more for early archery season. Um, that area is a DMAP area, so there there'll be special doe permits that I could probably purchase for that area, and that's
Hmm.
pretty much what I'm. I mean, of course, I would love to find some big bucks there, but I was just looking for another place to maybe shoot some does. So I'm just scouting it out, see what it's got.
Hmm.
But yeah, to answer your question, definitely they seem like they bed low near water, and where you get a flat spot down there on the bottom of the bowl, and they seem to tuck up underneath something right now this time of year.
Hmm.
Now that could all change, like I said, with the weather. Um, they might lay out more in the open in the middle of some rhododendron or something, or some
Say
little
rhododendron 3 times really
rhododendron.
fast.
I don't want to.
All right.
So yeah, they work their way up over the ledge. I'm usually there waiting, and
And then you draw back and
that's how I poked them.
release an arrow
Yeah.
or a gun.
I mean, I know we make it sound easy, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff I look for.
Yeah. Okay.
You
Well,
know.
let's jump ship here. That's Pennsylvania in the mountains of Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Completely different where I'm at. I mean, you got to see a little bit of Sitka deer, which is all flat, all
Yeah.
pines and flat. But the two primary public land spots I hunt is where I'm at. Everything is flat. There's no pinch points. There's no funnels. It's just big, wide open or big timber, planted pines. Everything's in rows, and the other public land does have a little ag on it, but it's still very flat. It's some areas are very swampy, but the deer are in the cattails.
Hmm.
They bed inside of the cattails, and I constantly see people on YouTube saying that deer don't bed in cattails. Well, I think if they had an option, they probably wouldn't really choose cattails
I
because
guess. Yeah.
it's swampy, it's wet, probably a lot of bugs. But when the pressure is on, they go to the cattails because nobody goes in there.
All right.
I have a video on my channel I posted a few weeks ago on one of the spots I hunt that I'm going to focus in on this year. Last year I had a cell cam back there and I didn't get a single picture in
Hmm.
the summer. Not one deer picture in the summer. As soon as hunting season started, I started getting pictures in the cattails
Okay, makes
because
sense.
because these cattails, the section that I focused on is the furthest spot away from any parking lot or it's far away. So a lot of people don't go back. I never got a personal camera. So I know not many people's back there. Um, but the rest of it is regular just hardwoods. But then you get into the end of this little strip that goes out into this cove surrounded by water,
Hmm.
all cattails. Probably 5 acres of cattails. Not a single picture in the summertime. Deer season started and it got more and more and more and more leading all the way until the end of December. I mean, bucks, doe. I mean, it just picked up as the season went on. Reason being is the hardwoods is getting pressured. They're bedding somewhere else in the summer, and then the action starts. Hunters get in there. It pushes them into these cattails, and they 1,000% bed in these cattails.
Huh.
There's trails going all through there. There's bedding. I mean, people can check out the video I have on my channel, like from 3 weeks ago or so, but 4 weeks, maybe a month, but 100% cattails. When the season starts, the heat is on, pressure gets started, they're into cattails.
It's
Now you don't have
interesting.
none of that where you're at.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, not really.
So and remember when me and you went Sika hunting, you got all that frag and stuff.
Yeah,
They're in there. Remember
that's
how
where they were
many?
coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's Sika deer, but that's where they live. But it's just an
Yeah.
example of if that's what they have and that's what they're used to, they're going to use it.
Hmm.
Now, if you take a deer, like if for example, if you take good thick hardwoods and bunch of down trees and stuff, and all of a sudden you introduce like cattails magically appear, like the deer aren't going to go into cattails.
There's no need to really. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's there and they're used to it. They know that they can go in there because it's safe.
You're right.
So
Well, and like you said, we'll switch topics here and go into creating. Well, I don't create bedding because I don't have the property to do that,
right.
but because I hunt like 90% public. So the one area that I set up on in the one spot is down low near the river. But see, we had a couple microbursts come through. And when they came through, they knocked down this whole swath of trees. And that was like automatic bedding
Mm,
because it's just a gnarly mess down in there. And then you get all that regrowth because now you've got all this sunshine coming down. You know, it's just gnarly down there. Well, that's the edge that I set up on, and I that's how I hunt bedding in the big woods
hmm
in
Yeah.
the one spot that I go to.
Yeah.
Just an idea. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Well,
someone if they get a
it's
wildfire
hmm
or a microburst comes through or something, that's going to be a hot spot in the upcoming years.
Yep. Well, it's different. Excuse me. It's different from area to area. Like we just described two different scenarios. Well, there's going to be 20 different scenarios. This is
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
two
Just
that we see
we're familiar with.
that we're familiar with. Now, let's talk about creating bedding because when I go to clients' properties and stuff, a lot of people are hyped up about buck bedding. Gotta have
Yeah,
bedding, gotta have bedding, gotta have bedding. I'm like, slow down. Let's look at your whole property first before we start talking about this dreaded word that irritates me of buck bedding.
yeah,
So what it's interesting because like the biggest improvement that somebody can do to their property is cutting timber. Like that's the biggest thing because you're going to add structure to the ground, but then you open up the sunlight for food regrowth. So I remember last year I went to a property in Morgantown, West Virginia, and the entire property was pretty much wide open. It's closed canopy, you could see straight through. We went to one part of the woods and it was a flat, and then it dropped down into this bottom. And when we crested this hill and we dropped down to the bottom, there was all kinds of dead downfalls.
yeah.
I mean, it looked like a tornado went off.
Hmm.
And I told the client, I said, I guarantee you there's deer bedded right there because
Sure,
that was the only spot that had that kind of structure on the ground.
sure.
And as we're standing there talking, like 10 deer jumped up from this bottom and took off running. And that was the only spot that we walked on his 100 acres that we jumped deer.
Hmm.
And I told him, I said, why were they there? And he didn't understand. I said, look what's down there. It's all the structure, the downfalls, the treetops, and everything, and that's where the deer are bedded.
Yep.
So, and I mean, you see that on public land too.
Hmm.
Where you find that structure of down trees or whatever it is, that low brush, bushes or whatever it is, that's where they're going to bed. And you create that by cutting, cutting timber and
Yeah,
and getting
artificially you can create that. Sure.
yeah,
Yep.
getting the trees on the ground so there's structure on the ground.
Yep.
And but um I don't really recommend that on every property because it depends how the property is laid out.
Right.
Like,
Right.
why would you like I see a lot of people say, "Oh, well, if I have 5 acres, I'm turning that entire 5 acres into bedding."
Then you can't hunt
How you gonna hunt it?
it.
How you gonna maneuver around the property?
Great.
You know what I mean? So it's like you have to be careful with creating it because you can do it very easily by cutting the timber and hinge cutting in certain situations. Um, and they will get up in there a bed. But there's ways to do it, but I think it's overused
Yeah.
because
I mean, that's a big buzzword right now.
it is. It
You know,
really is. Everybody's hyped
PSI,
up on it.
improving property, I mean, well, it's that time of the year, so everybody's hyped. They want to get started.
And it's a good
I get
practice.
that, but,
Yeah.
you said something a couple podcasts ago that really should have made sense to people,
What I
and
say?
you said, "You only get one chance because if you knock down a bunch of trees that either had marketable value or, you know, it's just a dumb idea to do, you've lost those trees and
You're waiting 20 years for them to regrow.
yeah, I mean, you just messed up your property. So
Mhm.
think about what you're going to do first before you do it.
Yeah, have a plan. Like cutting the timber is like the best thing you could do, but it could also be the worst thing you could do because if you don't do it right or you make it too thick or so, I had a guy message me that's a couple weeks ago that he went to a property that another consultant went to, and the way the other consultant designed the property was I think it was like 20 acres, and the consultant that was originally there told him to clear cut or select cut the entire property, the entire piece.
Hmm.
And we were talking back and forth on, well, when you, and I actually have a video about that like 2 years ago I made, but when you select cut 20 acres, say you select cut 20 acres, that entire property is now the same because it's all
You
select cut.
Well, not only that, but you're opening it up the whole property to a point that where now you're going to see through the whole property probably.
Well, when it grows up, what I'm saying is when it grows up, the entire property is now the same.
Yeah, it's going to be a big jungle now.
Instead of taking 5 acres of that and select cutting it and then leaving another portion of it alone, then you have a difference within that 20 acres because the deer are going to be in the 5 acres that you
Uh,
select cut.
I always say diversity. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be a difference within that property, and that allows you to hunt it. When you
Yep.
select cut it, the entire 20 acres, how do you hunt it? Because the deer are going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
They're going to be all over. You're going to end up spooking more deer. Um, instead of just doing a portion of that
So portion it out. Yep. That's what
and
I was
then
going to say.
right and then be able to hunt the rest.
Yeah.
So have a plan, guys, when you're cutting. Like the biggest improvement you can do is cut. It's one of the things that people fear the most of cutting because they want to see I mean, you had this kind of too in your head, like you like the trees, like you don't want to
Yeah,
cut
I
them,
did for a long time. I mean, because
but
I only have so much property and I didn't want to
right,
cut down all my trees.
right,
But as I get older, I think I would enjoy having better food plots than a couple of trees that'll still be there after I'm dead
right.
that I didn't make no money on or anything anyhow, you
Yeah,
know. And I thought, well, I might as well cut some of these trees down. I can use them for firewood, so I'm not out anything, you know.
hmm
But I can open up the canopy. I can get light down better, more light down into my food plots, and enjoy that more. Because I
right.
don't know how many seasons of archery I have left. You
And
know,
what happens when you get more sun on food plots and browse? It becomes more palatable.
it's gonna
It's
be
more
just
nutritious.
better overall.
You get more food, and like that's like the number one limiting factor when I go places is you can see straight through the woods,
Well,
and
that's
there's
more
no
important to me
there's
than
no food.
bedding
Yeah.
because there's enough property around me. They can bed on their property. I don't care.
hmm
As long as
Well,
they're
look.
coming through to get a bite and I
Yep.
can look them over and shoot
hmm
them if I'd like.
Look at the old farm. The old farm we worked together on the Lucky Stand. We
Hmm.
had that food plot in the corner. Well, it was only 50 yards into that woods, like looking out from the Lucky Stand over to the right
Yeah.
was another property. Where'd
Yeah,
them deer come from?
we were on a
They
property
funneled.
line. Yeah.
I didn't create bedding. The deer, we sucked them out
Yeah,
of that woods.
for
We
sure.
let them bed where they want to bed. We sucked them into that property
Yeah.
and we saw dozens of deer. I mean, that place was
To be
dynamite
honest,
after.
that was over 100 acres and we didn't create any bedding areas on that property except for that one little spot you did some hinging on that
Mhm.
back. And
Because
that was only like a little area of what, 50 by 50 or something like that?
no, it was total. It was probably about a half acre
Was it
that I went.
that
Yeah,
much?
yeah, that I went back in there. But the
Okay.
reason that was there, I did that was because we weren't hunting the back part of that woods.
No.
We were hunting around the food plots, so we wanted to draw them deer out of the woods
Right.
to the food plots. But primarily, we let them bed where they want to bed off the property because nobody was over there, and we drew them out of them bottoms up to the top side in that 3 acre food. And I mean, that just it worked perfectly. But the emphasis on bedding is important, but it's overhyped right now
Yeah,
on social media.
I'm not a huge proponent of it, to be quite honest. It has its places, but I can't use it because I don't have the property to do it.
Yeah, I think like a small property, it shouldn't be used that much. When you have a larger property, then you can start cutting acres and acres and then have different habitat features throughout the property where you select cut a portion of it and then you maybe uh, clear cut a portion of it and then leave another portion alone and then have trails going back and forth with bedding. And they're just like in food plots, there's a lot you can do, but you have to have a plan and you have to be careful with all of it, basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
So just be careful with it, guys. Cutting the timber is the best thing you could probably do for a property, but it can also destroy your property if you don't do it right. Have differences within your private property. Don't select cut or don't clear cut the entire thing. Make it different. Make your property have different uh, features throughout.
That was all clear as mud.
Yep,
Now we got
clear
everybody
as mud.
confused.
Yeah,
But
we
yeah,
got
I mean, there has to be a diversity to it, or
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
you gotta have a plan, man.
you
Like you
they.
can't just go in there all willy nilly.
I mean, if you have a monoculture, like you said, just of all just stuff laying down, where do you know to set up at?
Right. There's no transitions when you do that.
Right.
Look what we did at uh or you weren't there for that, but yeah. I mean just you gotta have differences within the property and to make it different from your neighbors. You gotta
Yeah,
be careful with it and have a strategic plan.
yeah,
So
for sure.
any questions, guys? Let us know. That wraps up podcast 38, private land betting,
58.
58, private land betting in two different states, what the difference is there, and then private or public land, sorry, and then private land betting, how to create it, what to look for, and what not to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers a lot of questions that people may had. And yeah, I'm pumped up for the Harrisburg show.
Woo. I
Woo!
hope we just don't get sick.
Nah, it'll be all right.
Okay, guys, we'll see you on 59.
Yes, we
See ya.
will. Later.